I'm Brittany, this is Mo Run, and welcome to Gaywatch, where we watch and read gay things. Thank you for being here today as we begin Volume 10 of Erha, and here's how it works. We read for a couple of hours. We take a small break somewhere around the middle, and we typically read around 40 to 50 pages. I have never read this series before, and will therefore be reacting and discussing and theorizing while reading. So, there are no spoilers allowed in the chat or the comments for the sake of myself and any other new readers. Before we start, there are 3 very quick things that you need to know. 1, we have book chats every Tuesday and Thursday at 2:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for YouTube members and patrons to discuss what we read in the previous stream right before we read more in the next one. If you are looking for more queer bookish chats and discussions, there is an evergreen link in the description for this stream that will take you to the public version of the Gaywatch Discord. And lastly, general trigger warnings are also in the description, should you need them. Hello, chat! We are back after 3.5 months of being gone, and we finally get to resume / start finishing Erha today. And then on top of that, Liv, not even for the first time, Liv has once again gifted a bunch of membership subs to everyone. Thank you so much, Liv. You just continue. You're delightful, Liv. Thank you so much for that. Exceedingly generous of you. Now, before we start, I don't know, how are we feeling? I tell you what, not feeling great. Are we terrified? Are we terrified of this cover? This is more terrifying than Shuemeng being on the cover crying with his parents in the background. And they fucking died in that volume. This is scarier. What is this? We have dogs consuming, chewing. We have a dog, the dog, let's be honest. And then we have like this terrified, who came up with this? 7 C's, I demand a name. Okay. If, everyone's horrified. Well, good, I'm not alone then. And if that is all, if that is all we have to really say, what can you even say at this point, given how the last stream 3.5 months ago ended? Speaking of which, actually, previously on Erha, certain, Tae Jun, Chuaning, not great. Not great. Makes all the thematic sense in the world, but not great. Also, what happened immediately before that, Shuemeng now knows about Chuaning and Moran, and found out actually in front of the Han Shui brothers, who, by the way, are brothers and twins, in one of the greatest punchlines I've ever seen in a series. They're twins. They're brothers. Shuemeng finds this out in front of them. And we're frolicking off with Tae Jin to see what he's been working on for like a decade. That will presumably help Hua Binan do what he and his Beauty Feast clan would like to do to the timelines. So, we are on page, I'm sure it's page 11. It is indeed. We are on page 11 for chapter 295, which is called The Martyr's Path. I've read Heaven Official's Blessing. I don't need another martyr. Okay? Meat Bunch should be able to change the story before I start reading it, right? Before them lay a bridge. It began at the edge of the cliff and extended endlessly toward the horizon. At the far end, a stone door was set against the firmament. It was impossible to guess its true size. It stood among the clouds, wreathed in scarlet flames that the torrential storm, with all its thunder and lightning, couldn't douse. Shizun, do you remember? You told us this story once yourself. A very long time ago, demons wreaked havoc upon this world. After Gochen the Exalted helped Fushi vanquish them, the demon tribe was banished from the mortal realm. Tishunjin stared out at the massive stone door hanging in midair, hands behind his back. Defeated, the demon lord and his armies fled. Upon returning to the demon realm and the humiliation of his defeat, he sealed all doors that linked his world to the world of mortals. From then on, those of the demon race would never set foot in the mortal realm again. He paused. But nothing is absolute. As a precaution, the demon lord left one passage remaining. The door you see in front of you. Thunder pealed. Lightning crashed. The Martyr's Gate. Page fucking 1. We're the Martyr's Path is to the... All right. The Martyr's Path leads through the Martyr's Gate. You realize that makes perfect sense. Branding, you know, you get through the Martyr's Gate, but through the Martyr's Path. Or maybe it's backwards. The Martyr's Gate leads to the Martyr's Path. Either way, cohesion in the concept of the Demon Lord. Chu Wanning wasn't looking at the door. Since the moment they'd arrived on the cliffs, his eyes had been trained on the massive bridge linking the demon realm to the backwoods of Xisheng Peak. He'd first been stricken by the sight, then his face had gone pale. At last, he'd seemed to shatter, his face crumpling with black despair. His head snapped around. Moe Yu, are you insane? This bridge. It's beautiful. Tishunjin's only reaction to Chu Wanning's outburst was a faint smile. What's wrong? He asked, though he knew the answer. Don't you like it? Like it. Not one piece of wood had been used in the construction of the wide and impossibly long bridge. I know what that means. I don't even need to read I could read the rest of this page keeping my eyes closed. Like now. I really could. Not one iron nail. Every inch was made of human bodies. One corpse stacked upon another, reaching into the horizon, all of them crushed into this dead man's bridge that stretched out into the skies. There were the bodies of men and women, young and old, compacted together all the way to that majestic gate. The number of dead was impossible to guess. I am going to kill her with my bare hands and add her to the bridge. What do you mean? She pulled one of my favorite things on me. That's what she did. We're barely at the end of page 2, by the way. She did the thing where something is happening or what have you. There's some activity that you think is just crazy, you think is just violent, you think is just there. And then, as it turns out, No. There was a point to that thing that you never thought of or asked about for whatever reason. The whole fucking time. He hasn't just been killing indiscriminately. He's been building a bridge. He needed a lot of material, and knowing the demon lord, it probably had to be a bridge of bodies in order to build a bridge to the... This whole time. I'm so angry. Since this is the Martyr's Gate, of course it requires a martyr's path. Taishanjun was perfectly at ease, as if all these corpses were no more than street-side pebbles or logs chopped from the nearby forest. He whistled, and a beam of dazzling blue light lit up along the bride's length. Something seemed to be rushing toward them. But there are some secrets about the demon realm even Shizun doesn't know. Taishanjun turned back to Chu Wanning and grinned. If Shizun doesn't mind, this disciple will enlighten you. Chu Wanning said nothing. Shizun knows that during the battle between Fuxi and the Demon Lord, Gochen the Exalted turned traitor and forged the first true sword in the world for Fuxi. The Demon Lord held a grudge for this and exacted vengeance on Gochen the Exalted. Though he couldn't touch the god of 1,000 weapons, he could punish those of Gochen's tribe. After the battle, he banished them from the demon realm. Taishanjun watched as the spot of blue light grew brighter, his voice low and measured. The demon race has always possessed potent spiritual energy, but their power cost them in stamina. Only the meat and grains of the demon realm could sustain their spiritual cores. After Gochen the Exalted's tribe was lost in the mortal realm, their cores withered without the sustenance of their homeland. In the end, most became powerless wretches. The only demonic traits they retained were the ease with which they could cultivate and breed. Taishanjun paused, turning back to Chu Wanning. Shizun's realized by now which race Gochen the Exalted belonged to, right? No. No. No! I'm not doing this again! No! The last thing he wanted to do was play question and answer with Taishanjun, but what choice did he have? Chu Wanning clenched his jaw. The butterfly-boned beauty feasts. Sure. Gochen the Exalted is a beauty feast. Why not? Huaibinan's a beauty feast. You know, been a beauty feast this whole time. Everyone's a beauty feast. I'm a beauty feast. We're all beauty feasts. You got it. Taishanjun made a show of clapping for him, then smiled. The butterfly-boned beauty feasts, once a formidable power in their own right. To perpetuate their bloodline, their constitutions evolved over time to become the perfect cultivation vessel. When bodies so uniquely suited for dual cultivation also possess powerful spiritual cores, their descendants beget more descendants, and each generation will be stronger than the last. But the doors to the demon realm had closed forever. Cut off from their supply of spiritual energy, their powerful cores withered, leaving only bodies rich with spiritual energy. So if we open the door... I'm stopping all the time, I'm so sorry. If we open the door... But we needed a bridge to get to the door, so we needed bodies to be in the bridge. In the house that Taishanjun built. Where the fuck even? I'm not on this page anymore. I'm on the other page. Of course, said Taishanjin, eyes dulling as if reminded of someone in particular. They also possess the staggering beauty of the demon race. Chu Wanning didn't need him to elaborate on this detail. The cultivation world viewed butterfly-boned beauty feasts in one of two ways: flesh to be consumed, or cultivation vessels to be fucked and used. Hadn't Song Chutong been auctioned off at the Xuanyuan Pavilion for this exact reason? Even someone as outwardly rational as Jiang Shi didn't view butterfly-boned beauty feasts as human beings, let alone the crowds of cultivators who weren't bastions of morality in the first place. When the strong possess beautiful faces and alluring bodies, said Taishanjin, glancing surreptitiously at Chu Wanning, that's the perfect finishing touch. But if these traits fall to the weak, those who possess them become as vulnerable as dark feathers on snow or a white fox in the shadows. They are doomed to be violated or slaughtered. I'm marking this down because you could really, that's vital. That's vital to, that is one of the many keys that you need to unlock what the fuck is going on in Erha. And like the point that is huge for understanding Erha. So I'm just making a note. When the poor are beautiful, they're exploited. When the strong are beautiful, finishing touch. Said by Taishanjin? That blue glow was coming closer, ever closer. In the beginning, Taishanjin continued, the butterfly-boned clan still had enough demonic power to hold their own among mortals, but gradually their power weakened and disappeared. The result is what we see now. In those days of antiquity, the strong preyed on the weak, and the pure-blooded butterfly-bone beauty feasts quickly died out. The survivors hid their identities in order to avoid the same fate. How did they hide? Wow, said Taishanjin. That's the first time you've opened your mouth to ask a question of me. His eyes flickered. It's actually quite simple. You probably remember how Song Chutong cried golden tears. This is a trait unique to the demon race. To hide your identity, you only need not to cry. Chu Wanning said nothing. It was simple enough to say, but not at all simple in practice. Butterfly-bone beauty feasts were impossibly beautiful, conspicuously so. If some cultivator suspected them, there was no shortage of ways to force them to shed tears. Welcome back to Erha, everybody. It's so good to be back. Did I mention how much I fucking missed you? Because I really did. I missed you, and I missed this, oddly enough, which probably says something about me, but we don't need to go into that right now. The undiscovered butterfly-bone beauty feasts managed to live on. Some retreated to live in seclusion in the mountains, while others chose to marry mortals. The children of such couplings were sometimes human, sometimes demon. Children can't control their crying. If the demonic blood ran stronger in them, all it took was for them to scrape their knee and shed a few golden tears for disaster to befall both parent and child. Winding up with a human child was nothing to celebrate either. The demon bloodline remained dormant in them. Who knew when another butterfly-bone beauty feast would pop up somewhere in the family line? Chu Wanning frowned as a name came to mind. Song Xingyi. Yes, the jade-hearted Lord Song Xingyi from hundreds of years ago. Taishanjun nodded. You're right. As the generations wore on, sometimes an extremely lucky child would be born, one who didn't cry golden tears or have the obvious constitution of a cultivation vessel. They appeared just like normal humans, but the potency of their demon bloodline allowed them to form a spiritual core very quickly. Their spiritual energy was no weaker than that of any pure-blooded demon, but such children were impossibly rare. In thousands of years, the butterfly-boned beauty feasts that rose to the level of Zongsha can be counted on one hand. At this, he spread his fine-boned fingers and waggled them before Chu Wanning, half in mockery and half in genuine interest. After a beat, he continued. Many butterfly-boned beauty feasts yearned to go back to the demon realm. If only they could go home, they'd never have to live through this kind of terror. They'd never have to go all their lives holding back their tears. They'd never fear being sold off as a cultivation vessel or dismembered for consumption. In the years of chaos, when cultivators hunted butterfly-bone beauty feasts to increase their own power, they'd never again have to scar their faces for fear their beauty would doom them to death or worse. So, if we just want to go home, then why are we meshing two timelines? I mean, building a bridge certainly takes a lot of materials, but converging timelines? When we just need to open the door? Maybe that's part of opening the door. Maybe that's part of opening the door. I'm deliberately not looking at chat right now. Hey! I'd jump out a window, but hey! Where the fuck am I? Here we are. He'd spoken so soothingly for so long that the blue light hurtling toward them had resolved into distinct shapes. Shapes? Plural? A team of 5 horses pounding down the martyr's path, pulling a carriage behind them. But returning to the demon realm was no easy task, said Taishanjun. The demon lord despised Gochen the Exalted. To him, Gochen was a traitor that had gone over to the gods. His entire line deserved to be wiped out, eternally blighted. Of course he wouldn't let the pitiable butterfly-bone beauty feasts return home. Chu Wanning said nothing. The storm raged above them, filling the air with the damp stink of petrichor. Taishanjun watched the carriage approach. It was a long moment before he continued. Then the first demon lord died, and his successor took the throne. The new ruler was more lenient. Something shifted in Chu Wanning's eyes. He allowed the butterfly-bone beauty feasts to return. Yes, said Taishanjun, smiling. But as Shizun can see, he set conditions that cannot be met without the use of the forbidden techniques. Thank you. If the butterfly-bone beauty feasts wanted to come home, there were certain things they had to do. Chu Wanning's heart juddered. He could see the outline of the story taking shape. Taishanjun gestured airily at the bridge of corpses before them. Look at the martyr's path. It is the only bridge that links the mortal world to the demon realm, and it requires the willing sacrifice of living humans for its construction. Excuse me? He chuckled. Finding one person willing to die for another's cause is an enormous stroke of luck. Finding 5 such people would be an unthinkable fortune. 100 would be a total absurdity. Everyone has their own life to live. Who would willingly die to let descendants of demons go home? Chu Wanning looked up. Hence, the Zhenlong chess formation. Taishanjun hadn't expected him. Whew! It's been 3.5 months. I'm getting I gotta get back in reading shape for doing this bullshit. At the same time as I'm supposed to be enunciating words. Pardon me. Jin hadn't expected him to reply. He paused and bared his teeth in a grin. Indeed. He looked back over the majestic sprawl of the martyr's path and narrowed his eyes. Over the years, this venerable one has used the Zhenlong chess formation to make every last one of them willingly lay down their lives. How many did you kill? Jin looked at him, fixing Chu Wanning with those eyes so dark they glinted purple. Everyone. Chu Wanning flinched. Almost everyone. The bridge before them seemed to stretch on without an end. Insulated by the sounds of pouring rain, they might have been surrounded by silence or by the screaming, sobbing, shrieking, howling, and begging of the dead. Chu Wanning trembled, but it wasn't from the cold. Do you know how long this bridge has to be? Jin went on peaceably. This venerable one slaughtered almost everyone in this world. There might not be more than 10,000 souls left alive. Yet this bridge is only half built. The deaths of the final 10,000 aren't enough to fill the gap. Silence. Yeah. So we need... It's almost like we need a whole other population. But where are we going to get that? Side note, we also have to use these like forbidden techniques and stuff, and like one of them hops through time and timelines. When he spoke at last, Chu Wanning's voice was shaking. And that's why you had to open the space-time gate. You're always leaping to the worst conclusion, said Jin. But you're right. Only by opening the space-time gate of life and death and collecting thousands more Zhenlong pawns from another world can this bridge be made complete. Rain beat down around them, sluicing off the barrier shielding them from the storm. They stared at each other, brown eyes boring into purple black until a bolt of lightning lit up Chu Wanning's snarl of maddened fury. You're all insane. In the wild light of the storm, all Jin did was sneer. This venerable one knew you'd react this way. He turned aside. The carriage had drawn close enough to make out some details of its build. Space-time gate, Zhenlong chess. He paused. Better still if you have rebirth. Once all three techniques have been used, the gate to the demon realm will open, and the butterfly-boned clan can go home at last. Chu Wanning was shaking. Rage and terror had rendered him mute. Jin kept his eyes on the carriage and spoke with a rare empathy. I'm sure you want to know why they had to use these forbidden techniques for the Demon Lord to allow their return. But it's actually very simple. Gochen the Exalted created the three forbidden techniques. They represent the once absolute power of the Demon Clan. Later, Gochen saw them as the source of catastrophe and asked Fuxi to prescribe them and tear the records to pieces. It was because of Gochen that the Butterfly Bone Beauty Feasts were condemned, so of course they'd have to denounce him and declare themselves his enemy. They had to stand against Gochen the Exalted and violate Fuxi's heavenly authority to win the Demon Realm's forgiveness. With a long whinny, the demon horses at the head of the carriage broke through the flames of the martyr's path and into the baleful rains of the mortal world. They stood poised and proud at the end of the bridge. Jin's black robes fluttered in the wind. He stroked the bare skull of one dark steed and turned back to Chu Wanning. Use the forbidden techniques, defy Gochen the Exalted, and make an enemy of Fuxi, all to regain their place as the rightful descendants of demons. Shizun, now do you understand? Everything Kuai Binan has done was for the Butterfly Bone Beauty Feasts. That's the end of the chapter. We're on page 21 for chapter 296, which is called Like That Bygone Dream. Just getting a sip of tea. Hang on a second. Well, um, yeah. I had all the questions that I had. I think I mentioned most of these issues in the book chat before this stream as to like the outstanding uh questions that one would have going into this volume. I maybe thought we'd be more into volume 10 before this. Just having it all outlined so neatly. But here we are. It seems so, and this is especially fucked up. It seems so simple. I'm gesturing like I have a murder board back here. It seems so, yeah, makes sense. Checks out. Seems legit. I don't know. Sure. Yeah. Beauty feasts, notoriously abused, murdered, and, just want to go fucking home. And if they have to ruin a couple of timelines to do it, fuck those people. Am I right? All they do is torture and kill and eat and variety of other things. That's all they no this makes, yeah. This is mind-blowingly simple, which elegant. There's another word for it. Elegant. This is elegant. This is elegant as fuck. All of this complication, all of this fallout, all of these plottings and plot twists and personal histories and circumstances and little twists and turns and changes and steps and forwards and backwards and all of that and all the mysteries that begat mysteries that were caused by other mysteries, all of that, to say nothing of the journeys of the two main characters, was in service of something actually pretty straightforward, pretty simple. I hate her. Hate her. I fucking hate her. I hate her. I hate her. Chapter 296. Like that bygone dream. Understand. What was there to understand? Ximing Jing had hidden his identity from Xisheng Peak from the start. All those years, he'd avoided the subject of his parents. Whenever it was brought up, he'd say a scant few words before looking so grieved no one had the heart to press him further. A lie always had its flaws. False stories told at length revealed their holes. Damn. Could write that down too. Hang on. Shimei wasn't ignorant of such basic truths. In hindsight, even when he was still a boy, Shimei never cried, no matter what kind of injury or turmoil he endured. Come. This venerable one will bring you to look at the other end of the martyr's path. The carriage was of demonic origin, cast of pure gold and emblazoned with scenes of the demon territories inlaid in silver. 2 figures occupied the front of the carriage. On the left was a bearded man, his face twisted in a mask of fury and a set square clutched in his hands. The sculptor must have borne him some terrible grudge, for the statue's face was so ugly and misshapen, anyone who clapped eyes on it would despise him on sight. On the right was a pudgy woman, her face set in stern lines and her hands gripping a compass. Her, the artist had spared, though she, too, was ugly. She was at least bearably so. The most unsettling element hovered before the team of horses. A set of dismembered limbs and a bloody severed head, held suspended with spiritual energy. Upon closer inspection, they were only wooden carvings, not real body parts. But Chu Wanning had seen the fake Go Chen at Jingcheng Lake and recognized his likeness immediately. All the carriages in the demon realm are like this. Tianjin glanced at the vividly carved head. It's been this way for thousands of years. They took their seats inside, the little bells on the horses' bridles chiming as the carriage swayed. Tianjin sprawled out comfortably. You can tell who those statues are meant to be, right? Fuxi and Nua. Yes. He laughed. The old demon lord hates the heavenly realm so much, he'd make the gods pull his carriage for a lifetime if he could. But Shenong was spared. That I don't know. Hua Binan never mentioned it. But the legends say Shenong was kind and magnanimous. He never involved himself in any violence, nor was he particularly close to Fuxi and Nua. The sly old fox probably kept his hands clean of the whole thing. Silent, Chu Wanning turned toward the window, looking out at the crimson path before them. The demon horses ran swiftly. In just a few minutes, they'd made it to the end of that bloody bridge. They exited the carriage, white bone bridge beneath their feet, and an endless sea of clouds before their faces. The gate to the demon realm was hundreds of times larger than it looked from Xishang Peak. This close, its full size and details were inescapable. It was impossibly huge, seeming to reach up through the skies and down through the earth, hissing and crackling with demonic flame in the rain. Next to it, a mortal seemed as insignificant as an ant on the trunk of a great tree, a single grain in the vastness of the ocean. Chu Wanning stared at that set of titanic doors. Every inch of its surface was covered in intricately detailed carvings depicting scenes of the 5 realms, beginning with the demon realm at the top, descending through the ghost realm, fey realm, and mortal realm, and ending with the heavenly realm at the door's foot. The engravings were majestic, but they radiated an indescribable evil. Does it feel very strange? Tianjin came to his side and gazed at the doors with him. The first time this venerable one saw it, this venerable one couldn't figure it out either. Chu Wanning didn't respond. It took the better part of an hour before this venerable one realized what was wrong. But it was clear he wasn't going to waste another hour letting Chu Wanning stare at it as well. The carvings aren't made of the same stone as the door. They were embedded later, he said. They're all made of the bones of gods. Chu Wanning whirled to look at him. Bathed in the light of the demonic flame, Tianjin looked even more volatile. In that primordial battle between the gods and demons, the demon lord ordered all the captured gods flayed and dismembered. Their bones were engraved and set in the doors leading to the demon realm. A gust of wind snapped through his robes. From then on, any living thing entering the demon realm would see how many heavenly gods its inhabitants had slain. It's a declaration that the demon race behind those doors will never share the same skies as the gods again. Oh, God! You know what's funny? You know what's absolutely pure fucking comedy? I forgot about art. I forgot about art. Forgot about that. Forgot that art was a fucking thing. Hang on. Hang on. Hang on. There we are. The door. You know. The door made of gods. God's bones. Bones of the gods. He looked at that disquieting sight a beat longer. It's about time, said Tianjin. Now that you understand what we're doing, are you still going to waste your breath on reproach? Slaughtering everyone in 2 worlds, just to pave the way home. Chu Wanning looked up. Though he knew Tianjun was a puppet on strings, he couldn't help sneering. If not reproach, were you expecting praise? Before Tianjun could answer, the shuffle of footsteps rose behind them. They looked back to see Mu Yanli leading a massive throng out of the back mountains of Xisheng Peak. She clearly hadn't expected to find them here. She blinked in surprise, eyes flicking to Tianjun's companion. How could you bring him here? Her eyes never left Chu Wanning as she questioned Tianjun. Think before you act. This venerable one can guess what he'll do just by looking at him, said Tianjun coolly. You needn't worry. This place is key to the Butterfly Bone Beauty Feast's return, don't you know? Tianjun had no interest in wasting his breath. Is there anyone in that horde of garbage you keep around capable of matching him in a fight? Mu Yanli shut her mouth. Having him by this venerable one's side is more secure than locking him in a cage sealed with 10 different wards. This venerable one's doing you a favor keeping an eye on him. How have you still got so much shit to spew? Oh. Ooh. Tianjun 1, Mu Yanli 0. You... what? Tianjun peered idly at her, his gaze frigid. If that's not good enough, this venerable one will put him right back and wash my hands of the whole thing. You figure out how to keep him contained, but make sure you don't slip up and let him kill Hua Binan. Mu Yanli regarded him in stony silence, then changed the subject, seething. Very well. I've brought some pawns. Put them in. Anan captured more people from the other world. They're imprisoned at Xisheng Peak. After you deal with these, hurry back and make some more pawns. She left with a sweep of her sleeves. Tianjun glanced at Chu Wanning and smiled, his cheeks dimpling deeply. A new shipment of materials. It's your lucky day. Would you like to see how this venerable one builds the bridge? It's a scene break. Sacrificing living people to a floating bridge was a horror beyond imagining. That night, Chu Wanning had a terrible dream. Tianjun stood at the end of the bridge atop a pile of shattered corpses. From hearts to livers to stomachs to spleens, each human organ and every scrap of mangled flesh had grown a crimson mouth with which to scream. I don't want to die. Give me back my life. Give me back my life. In that heap of mutilated corpses, he saw a part of Shui Meng's face, saw Shui Jingyong's eyes, and Madame Wang's body. He saw Huaizui's hand, spotted with age. He threw himself at them, screaming, Shui Meng, sect leader, His voice died in his throat. Amidst that sea of scarlet, Mo Run slowly turned. He wore his old disciple's uniform, and his eyes were soft and sad. Shizun, he said, help me. I don't want to die. I don't want to be like this. Save me. Chu Wanning jolted awake with a gasp. His back was soaked in sweat. He wanted to sit up, but his wrists were bound with Tianjun's spells. He couldn't move. The room was silent but for his ragged breathing. The water clock dripped, water trickling from its spout like the tears of the dead. Is anyone there? He was skin and bones after all he'd been through, slender and frail. He lay on the bed, so slight he almost disappeared beneath the blankets. The memories of the past and his mistakes of the present, those piles of the dead and the hopelessness of his future. Each and every one hung as a weight upon his shoulders, heavy enough to grind even the steeliest resolve to ash. Chu Waning's eyes were vacant and dull. He stared mutely into the darkness as the dream slipped away, but reality wasn't much better than his nightmare. Upon waking, he looked only more harrowed. "Is anyone there?" he called again. Lu Gong came hobbling in, much older than Chu Waning remembered him. After all, it had been years since he'd died in this world. The old servant could read him like a book. "Zongsha, did you have a bad dream?" Chu Waning nodded sluggishly. "I'll go warm a pot of ginger tea for you." "That won't be necessary." Chu Waning looked up at him, his eyes wet and glassy in the dim. "Where is Mo Run? Is he still on the martyr's path?" Silence answered him. "How many more people did he kill?" Old Lu said nothing for a time. "Zongsha," he sighed. "Don't ask any more questions." The water clock plinked in the corner. Wind and rain rustled outside. This old servant doesn't know much about cultivation, but ever since the space-time gate was fully opened, I knew there was no way back. I'm sure Zongsha understands this too. Chu Waning's lips parted. He screwed his eyes shut, hooking his fingers around the scarlet chain of spiritual energy binding his wrists. Taishanjun had been wary of him since he'd failed his assassination attempt. When idle, Taishanjun watched over him personally. When called to build the path home for the demon clan, he locked Chu Waning in Wushan Palace. "Zongsha, you've done enough. It's been 2 lifetimes. You've done all you can." "Excuse me." That was not supposed to be in Chu Waning's voice. Lu Gong's voice was thin and reedy, like an autumn leaf clinging to a branch. "These are the last days we have. Just let it go, like the rest of us have done. Everything's coming to an end. There's nothing to be done. Why not enjoy the time you have left? Don't torment yourself." Ooh, fucking yikes. Damn. Everyone in the OG timeline has just laid down. Ooh. Despite Chu Waning's protests, Lu Gong brought him a bowl of ginger tea and watched him drink. In the past life, the old man had been careful. He knew when to speak up and when to keep his silence, which was why he'd lasted so long at Taishanjun's side. But on this miserable, rainy night, as he looked at Chu Waning, driven past the point of endurance and worn thin by despair, his eyes came to rest on his face, paler than even the ceramic bowl in his hands, and his feelings grew complicated. Lu Gong didn't know how to persuade him. "Have some more," he mumbled. "At least finish the bowl. Ginger tea drives out the cold, and everyone says nightmares are caused by the chill." You know what else causes nightmares? Body bridges. Anyway, I'm fine. It's fine. This is going great. So happy to be back, guys. If you drink it before bed, you won't have bad dreams. His voice dropped to a murmur. My son used to have nightmares all the time. Whenever I brought him ginger tea, he slept soundly. But those words were too quiet for Chu Wanning to hear. The old servant helped him finish the tea and left with the tray in hand. When he stepped out of the room, he wiped at his eyes. The old man had a soft heart, but he couldn't change anything. The realization bent his stooped back lower as he disappeared down the end of that long hallway. Old Lu was right. The time to stop Chimay had been before the space-time gate opened in the first place. They'd missed their chance, and the consequences were irreversible. Chu Wanning sat alone in Wushan Palace. He'd lost to Chimay. In the past life, he'd discovered the truth too late. All his planning, all his sacrifice, had only delayed this catastrophe by 12 years. In the end, they'd come back to the beginning. He'd done everything he could, yet it had all come to nothing. That's a scene break. I can't help but wonder, not to make a Epic the Musical reference, about just the time to stop Chimay had been before the space-time gate opened in the first place. I don't suppose there's a method, a way, a path, decidedly less made of bodies, in which we can hop backwards far enough? It's probably a silly idea, right? I'm just recognizing the narrative tendency, especially with time travel stuff, to bring up the the time to do literally anything was here. Then usually we hop back and do that. I might be clinging at, straws. Nearly all the ancient texts reported that tearing apart time and space would call down heavenly retribution. Yet even without this punishment, the two worlds had been destroyed past repair. These were the end times. Everyone could feel it. But with only his cognizant soul, Taishan-jun felt no unease. In fact, he was quite content with his lot. That day, he returned with a jug of pear blossom wine and poured 2 cups. The martyr's path is pretty much complete. Chu Wanning answered him with silence. Once Huabinan's accomplished his goal, things will settle down. He took a sip of his long-missed pear blossom white and grinned. Tastes just the same. He raised his eyes. Once they've all gone back to the demon realm, do you want to live in this world with this venerable one, or should this venerable one go through the space-time gate and keep you company in the other one? Where's Chimay? Taishan-jun blinked, and those dark brows drew together. Confusion and pain scrawled over his face. He set down his cup and kneaded at his temples. Chu Wanning watched his every move. Huabinan really had made a ruin of his mind. To Taishan-jun, the concept of Chimay was like a blank void. He physically couldn't think beyond it. Even trying gave him a splitting headache. He curled his getting back in the swing of things. He hurled his cup aside, and in the flickering candlelight stared in red-eyed exhaustion at the man before him. I don't know. He closed his eyes and pulled Chu Wanning into standing in front of him. Still seated, he buried his face in Chu Wanning's stomach and breathed deeply of his high-tongue scent. Don't ask me again. Taishan-jun was just as possessive of Chu Wanning as he had been in the first life, perhaps even worse. This corpse that should have had no emotions at all seemed terrified Chu Wanning would disappear again or die. He used the strongest spells and techniques at his disposal to keep him trapped. In the daytime, Taishan-jun left to make Zhenlong pawns to pave the martyr's path. At night, he entwined his limbs with Chu Wanning's again and again, as if only the wildest lovemaking could soothe the anxiety in his heart, as if he could only convince himself he wasn't dreaming by burying himself in the warmth of Chu Wanning's body. Wanning. In the dead of night, the man asleep beside him mumbled, "Pay attention to me." At such times, Chu Wanning felt the corpse wrapped around him had a soul, though he knew it to be impossible. The heart in his chest beat strong and steady, and his face was that of the dead young man Chu Wanning had lost. When he hoarsely said the name Wanning, something like love was audible in Taishan-jun's voice. It's the end of the chapter. Oh, jeez. All right. Okay. So this is exactly the perfect time to take a break. Listen. It's Erha, everybody. You know? The sky is blue. The sun is warm. And this is Erha. By the skin of our teeth and the shreds of the remnants of the residue of Morun's soul, will we possibly get through this? When we come back from the break, we'll be on page 33 for chapter 297, which is called Butterfly Boned Beauty Feasts. Feel free to hang out in the Gaywatch break room while I'm gone. Give the stream a like if you're having a good time. And I'll see you in a minute. And we're back. So, someone, Alambria in chat, it might be Alambria, said that, in order to be complimented, Tae-Shun-jun would have to knock shit off. And that's what I think is, there's the rub. I think Chuan-ning is going to have to find a way to genuinely praise Tae-Shun-jun, if that's going to be how we awaken the Mo run within the Tae-Shun-jun. You know? The poll that was put in the field over the break asked people to place their bets on when Mo run awakens, and it is a dead tie between after the door is opened and whenever Chuan-ning manages to praise him, Tae-Shun-jun. I'm betting, if I had to choose between one, I'd bet more on after the doors open. But honestly, praising him though, maybe he doesn't praise him until after the door is open. Who knows? We could both win, you know? We are on page 33 for chapter 297, which is called Butterfly Bone Beauty Feasts. I am going to sneeze. But I have a fancy cough button now. I don't know if you've noticed, but we have a couple of bells and whistles on the stream now that I'm having to work with and get used to and set up and all that stuff. And one of the first things I included was a cough button. The fact that it's paying off in the first stream, kind of hilarious. We gotta make jokes. We gotta make jokes, or we're not gonna make it. On the 6th day, the doors of Wushan Palace opened with a creak. The storm continued to rage outside. The figure in the doorway set aside his dripping umbrella, yanking aside his soaking robes and striding into the hall. Shizun. His clothes were the pale cream of lotus root, and he wore a headband across his brow. Those gently slanted peach blossom eyes, usually so beautifully expressive, were smudged with shadow. It was the first time Shimei had come to Wushan Palace to see him since the battle at the heaven-piercing tower. I wanted to visit Shizun earlier, but I couldn't step away until now. Please forgive my tardiness. Chuan-ning spared him only a glance before turning aside. Shimei didn't seem to mind. He settled down in front of Chuan-ning, looking quite pleased with himself. Perhaps construction of the bridge was proceeding more smoothly than anticipated, or he'd received some other good news. His eyes were sparkling and bright. Are you still mad at me? The door to the demon realm is soon to open. Shizun, don't you have any questions for me? Chuan-ning kept his silence, staring out the window at the rain. His helplessness and vulnerability were things only visible to the man he loved. Xu Mingjing had bled away all the warmth he'd had for him, reducing Chuan-ning to unfeeling stone. No words of his would melt him anymore. Shimei sighed. I meant to have a good talk with you today. Say something at the very least. Chuan-ning finally deigned to give him a response. Get out. The gay savagery. Now that success was close at hand, Shimei was more at ease than the last time they'd spoken. Chuan-ning's coolness didn't enrage him. Instead, he smiled. Look, you did say something. Rain drummed against the windows. The space-time gate had thrown both worlds into chaos. This unending rain was the least of the unusual phenomena that had occurred. Chuan-ning thought the storm might never end, that the rain would pour from the sky until it drowned both worlds. Shimei didn't mind his silence. He rose and poured 2 cups of tea, only continuing once he'd slid one next to Chu Waning's hand. If you're going to ignore me, I'll go ahead and talk at you. I don't like explaining myself, but I don't want there to be misunderstandings between Sejun and me. So offended was I by that fucking sentence? I pronounced Shijun, for fuck's sake. Oh, and Liv saying, oh, look how you still don't care for his consent? Ooh, damn. The tea was still hot. He blew at the tea leaves on the surface and took a measured sip. Where should I start? Since I was a child, I've done many awful deeds and told lies upon lies, but I never wanted to take innocent lives. I cannot imagine someone who has failed worse than. Chu Waning's hands clenched against his will, tendons protruding from bloodless skin. Shizun's seen the martyr's path, right? At the start, I only wanted to fill it with people worse than beasts. Their deaths would be no loss. Later, when I realized the distance it needed to span, so great it required the bodies from 2 universes to reach the other side, Shimei said. My heart ached too. I can't stop after every fucking sentence just to go Nova over the of this guy. A pause. I don't like having blood on my hands, so I've hardly killed anyone. I didn't lie to you. That's true, said Chu Waning suddenly. I believe that you've hardly ever killed with your own hands. That was a veiled Taishun jab. Shimei raised an eyebrow, bemused. Chu Wanning turned to him with eyes colder than ice. You're soft-hearted and benevolent. You don't want to take innocent lives. You don't like having blood on your hands. You wouldn't do any of that yourself. And that's why you created Taishanjin. So he'd be the one to slaughter Rufeng's sect. So he'd be the one befouled. He did everything you needed to do, but didn't want to. How clever. Now that's unfair of you, Shizun, Shimei sighed. I never wanted to slaughter Rufeng's sect. That was his own personal grudge. Without the flower of eightfold sorrows, he would never have committed such a grave sin. Are you sure? Are you so sure of that? Chu Wanning held Shimei's gaze. I am. Shimei smiled and waved a hand, dismissing the topic. Dismiss. God, even when it's not an overt stab at the reader just to piss them off, even when it's not on the nose, it's fucking, that almost makes it worse, actually. When she's just like openly trying to piss me off, that's already bad. Sure, not worth fighting over. I once told Xu Shuanglin I hoped for a world where the competent had power and the useless were powerless, where good and evil both received their just rewards. That was the truth. I didn't lie. But for the Butterfly-Boned clan, kindness to others comes at the cost of our own lives. Our way home must be paved in blood. I had no other choice. Chu Wanning closed his eyes. Shimei refilled his cup. Shizun can't understand why I would sacrifice the living of 2 worlds to bring the butterfly-boned clan back to the demon realm, he said with a sigh. It's really quite simple. He stared at the spirals of steam rising from his cup. The room was silent but for the ebb and flow of Shimei's gentle voice. Shizun, have you ever seen a herd of hunted bison? Maddened and desperate, charging every which way, ready to gore anyone standing in front of them, be they human or beast. It's their basic instinct to survive. Chu Wanning knew what he meant. The butterfly-boned beauty feasts were like animals driven to the edge of a cliff, surrounded by ravenous mouths ready to tear them apart. It's like the one scrap of sympathy and understanding that they get from me is that. The butterfly-boned beauty feasts have only 2 options. What? I'll get to that in a second. Return to the demon realm or die out entirely. Okay. All right. So, okay. Because for a second there, I was like, there was another option, but no. Not, if they want to survive. A choice between life and death. Shimei's eyes darkened. If the cultivation world didn't see butterfly-boned beauty feasts as livestock, to be sold and abused at will, if we had seen a future for our people in the mortal realm, nobody would wish to carry out such atrocities. What if, and since we're building, vast bridges out of bodies, I feel like I can ask a question like this, whereas it would be somewhat absurd in other stories. But what if, coming up with, a plan B here, what if, what if we just, took everyone from one timeline, put them in another timeline, and then the beauty feast just fucked off into their own timeline? That sounds no crazier than, as I hit the mic, than killing everyone in both. Eh? Shimei fell silent, emotions churning in his eyes. As Chu Wanning watched, they went from dark to distressed to apathetic before taking on a crazed glint, as if mirroring the course of his own life. The hunted bison never wanted to kill. But when the butchers bring down their knives, when the people around you start to die, one after another, Shizun, how do you expect us to forgive a world like this? Shimei's voice shook. The cultivation realm has never kept a historical record of the butterfly-boned beauty feasts. They see us as meat, or as cultivation vessels. But we've kept our own records. By the 11th year after the next great battle between mortals and demons, nearly all pure-blooded butterfly-boned beauty feasts had been murdered. In the thousands of years that followed, we never escaped cultivators' greed, no matter how carefully we hid. 4,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago, 900 years ago, 700 years ago, again and again, the hunters came for us. Those carrying the butterfly-boned bloodline were chased down and consumed, imprisoned and brutalized. They stopped at nothing to wipe us out. Shimei's fingers tightened around his cup, the strain visible in the tendons of his wrist. If we'd died out, that would have been the end of it, at least. But how could they give up such a promising cultivation method? There is something in there to be said about what happens, not even when humans get a whiff of necessity or necessary resources, but when there's something like power and the fact that, we have a tendency to obliterate resources in general. He paused. Shizun is very well read. I'm sure you know to what lengths the previous sect leader of Gugueya went to keep butterfly-boned beauty feasts from dying out completely. Do I want to know? I don't want to know. Shimei looked up at him, his peach blossom eyes stained crimson. Chuaning did. Any history of Gugueya made mention of the fact, lauding it as some kind of marvelous achievement. The medicinal sect Gugueya had captured 20 young women carrying the blood of the butterfly bone beauty feasts and invited strong and virile male cultivators to breed them day and night until they were with child. The sect leader plied them with drugs that shortened gestation to 4 months. After the babes were born, those women, still weak from birth, would be defiled again, forced to carry another child, and forced into unnatural labor, over and over, to continue the butterfly-boned line. I already mentioned it, but thank you for that reminder of the one sympathetic angle these people have. This propagation was like breeding livestock for the slaughterhouse. No, not like. They were livestock. The male infants were dismembered to make pills or sold to rich clients like Rufeng sect. The female infants were kept and reared in captivity until they became fertile and could be seeded to start the next batch. Seeded. Chu Wanning still remembered the shock and disgust he'd felt the first time he'd seen the word in a copy of Handbook on the Pills and Potions of Gugueya. It being framed as a good thing is also deeply accurate to history. I mean, hell, from the American side, you know, millennials, I don't know so much about Gen Zers and later, but even up to millennials, what kind of story were we told about Christopher fucking Columbus? Shimei smiled again. For the first time, that smile looked drawn and pallid. They reared butterfly bone beauty feasts the way one would venomous snakes, and won the cultivation realm's praise for it. Wait. Hang on. A copy of Handbook on the Pills and Potions of Gugueya. Hang on. Male infants were dismembered to make pills. Sorry, why is this... Like, yeah, Gugueya pills were... That's been brought up before. Almost inevitably, because everything has come up before. But you know what I mean. That was like a thing. And we're having a Soylent Green moment over the pills. Probably not every type of pill. However, yeah. But they were human beings. All human beings. Just because they had some ancient demon blood in their veins, enough to be useful for cultivation. Everyone deemed them animals. Shimei took a sip of tea to hide his own agony, but his fingers were trembling. The drugs used to induce labor left the mothers very weak. None of the captive butterfly bone beauty feasts lived past the age of 30, but for them that was a blessing. A quicker end to that nightmarish cycle of endless breeding and birthing. Spots of hateful color appeared on Shimei's cheeks when he said the words breeding and birthing, as if someone had slapped him. He fell silent. For a moment it seemed he'd lose control and start cursing, but he only pursed his mouth around a few bitter syllables. A mercy. And woof, there's really something to the fact that in order to hide. They can't cry. So they have to hear about all of this happening to people and see about it all happening to people, and they have to undergo all of these lives, but you can't cry about it. Because the second you do, you're exposed. That reminds me of sort of injustice of minorities in general, because there's something to the fact that you have to live life as an oppressed minority and see all of this shit and deal all with this shit and try to survive in a system that was at best in places not built with you in mind, and at worst built to actively destroy you, hinder you, etc. But the second you fucking try to say anything about it, do anything about it, communicate your experience, any of that, suddenly it's a problem. Like, you're the problem. Little too real. Little too real. Chu Wanning finally opened his eyes and looked at Shimei. With hatred so vividly etched on his face, this man who'd always been serene and enigmatic resembled any other person driven by revenge. Shimei lapsed into silence. Whatever he was thinking, it seemed to push him over the edge. He put down the cup and buried his face in his hands. He scrubbed at it, then took a deep breath. When he looked up again, his eyes were rimmed in red. Chu Wanning couldn't remember ever seeing Shimei so emotional before. Does Shizun remember why Gugueya stopped breeding butterfly bone beauty feasts? Chu Wanning didn't know how he felt. There was a bloodbath, he rasped. Butterfly bone beauty feasts weren't animals, no matter how they were treated. Even goo worms would bite back, much less living, breathing humans. During Jiangxi's Shifu's term as sect leader, one captive butterfly-boned girl refused to submit. Unlike her sisters, she was neither hollowly suicidal nor numbly unresisting, but possessed a calculating mind. Using sweet words and wiles, she seduced a high-ranking disciple of Tianyin Pavilion who'd come to Guigueya to peruse their wares. The disciple was a lascivious man, and he visited the beautiful girl's bed that very night. The next day she begged her new lover to buy her from Guigueya. She swore to be his for a lifetime, and aid in his cultivation however she could. Blinded by lust, the disciple did as she asked, only for her to run away a few days later. She somehow found the spark for apocalyptic fire and snuck back to Rainbow Isle under cover of darkness. The girl set the entire side courtyard where she'd been imprisoned alight. She helped the Butterfly Bone Beauty Feasts escape and left nearly 100 Guigueya disciples to perish in the flames. Yeah. I suppose that's another aspect that makes it complicated, and not just a fact of these people are crazy and they want to destroy the world, you know? It's only natural. It's just of course. Kind of course this would happen. That's the most inevitable thing in the world. It's kind of like I may have even mentioned this before, and if I have, I'm sorry. It's kind of like a decade or so ago, during the real birth of Black Lives Matter, and, you know, young black men dying left, right, and center, not even young men, sometimes boys dying left, right, and center. And then in Dallas, Texas, a black man, like, literally snapped and, like, got in a shootout with the police and, like, killed 5 of them and stuff. And a family member of mine specifically was just, like, stunned and bewildered at this, and I'm like, well, fucking yeah, You're killing them! You think someone isn't gonna... Huh? Fucking Luigi shooting the healthcare CEO. You think that's not gonna happen? Again, too real, meat bun. The other sex looked on with indifference, offering public words of consolation while privately mocking Guyeya for failing to manage a mere girl. The medicinal sect was deeply humiliated. Furious, the sect leader ended the Butterfly Bone Beauty Feast breeding program. Breeding program. If it's so amusing to you, he declared, don't come asking for medicines in the future. After all, so many of them escaped. If you have the skill, hunt them yourself. By the time Zhang Shi took up the position of sect leader, Song Chutong was the only Butterfly Bone Beauty Feast who remained in Guyeya's possession. She was meant to serve the sect leader, but Zhang Shi disdained carnal matters, disliked women, and saw Butterfly Bone Beauty Feasts as a source of disaster. He persisted in auctioning her off against the wishes of the sect elders. Shimei knew Chu Wanning remembered all this. He smiled. Let me tell you something you don't know. Go on. That day at Chuanruan Pavilion? Yes, the day Miss Song was auctioned. I was there as well. Chu Wanning blinked. I was there, in the Schwan booth. I bid 35 million. That did ring a bell. Mo-Run had been there with him. He'd taken pity on Song Chutong and wanted to save her, but the guest in the veiled chamber above him had bid 35 million right from the start. He'd even tried asking Mo-Run for money to bid against them. That was you. It was. Shimei's composure slowly returned. I swore an oath, long ago, to protect any Butterfly Bone Beauty Feast I could. Song Chutong was my kin. Once I heard the news, I tried to save her. Of course, I also hoped to use Bukui to trigger the fiendish energy in Mo-Run in that life. Who would have thought the half of your earth soul in him would work so perfectly as a shield? It even resonated with you instead. But enough. It's all in the past now. Shizun knows, regardless, that it was Ye Wangshi who bought her. She was your kin. Back at Rufeng's sect, why did I look on as she died? Shimei smiled. I had no choice. I had to keep my identity secret. To tell you the truth, I was the one who commanded Mount Huang to open. She was only a pretense. If things had gone differently, perhaps I could have saved her. But in front of Xu Shuanglin, Shizun knows my spiritual energy is weak. Xu Shuanglin was my source of strength at the time. He saw me as his confidant, but I'd befriended him under the guise of Xu Mingjing of Xisheng Peak. Chu Wanning watched him quietly. If he knew I was a Butterfly Bone Beauty Feast, would he still work with me? Shimei asked evenly. I said earlier that most cultivators see us as livestock, and Xu Shuanglin was no exception. I could tell from the way he treated Miss Song. All these revelations weighed on Chu Wanning. He didn't know what to say, but Shimei was still in the mood to talk. But that is neither here nor there. The one I wish to tell you about is the Butterfly Bone Beauty Feast who escaped. Guyeya. I feel very silly right now. Chu Wanning looked down in silence. After a moment, he raised his eyes to Shimei's peerlessly beautiful face. He'd already put the pieces together during his earlier tale. That woman. It was almost a sigh. She was your mother, wasn't she? Shimei blinked. The tension bled out of his back, the tight lines of his jaw unclenching. He laughed, a hollow sound. You always figured it out. Yes. She was my mother. That's the end of the chapter. I would love to fly off the fucking handle, but we're behind. So we're just gonna keep going. I should have figured it out the second that it wasn't named. But again, they do that in danmei. They have stories about one unnamed person in particular, and they turn out to be no one. But obviously you can very easily slip that right in there. Of course, I was deeply silly. So silly of me. We're on page 43 for chapter 298, which is called As Fate Would Have It. Rain hissed down on the roof. Chimay took a sip of tea. When he spoke again, it was decisive, as if he'd made up his mind. Let me show you something. He produced a stained copper mirror from his Cancun pouch. Its frame was patterned with flying dragons and soaring phoenixes winging their way through the sun, moon, and stars. This is the Yestertide mirror. It belonged to my father, surnamed Mu. I imagine Shizin's already guessed it. Mu Yanli and I are half-siblings. Chimay bit his fingertip and let a drop of blood fall onto the mirror's surface. The copper fogged over. When it cleared, a hazy illusion had appeared inside. Slowly, the picture took shape, and the details sharpened. They looked down upon the lookout platform at Tianyin Pavilion. It was a hot summer day, and the lotus pond beneath the pavilion was in splendid bloom. Red dragonflies dipped low. A sumptuously dressed woman stood by the railing, scattering scraps of pastry from a small dish. Fish leapt from the water to catch the crumbs falling from her red-painted fingers. Though she was beautiful, her features were severe. She lifted her head to speak to her servants, revealing upswept phoenix eyes, slightly sultry, and sharp in a way that spoke to her confidence in her looks. Chu Wanning frowned slightly. He looked at her, then again at Chimay. Guessing the source of Chu Wanning's confusion, Chimay smiled. She's not my mother. That's Mujija's mother, Lady Lin. As they watched, a pretty girl in an embroidered dress, her hair done up in the style of Tianyin Pavilion's servants, walked onto the scene. She looked to be no more than 18, her face soft with youth, and her manner gentle. Chimay ran his fingers over the mirror. This is my mother, a descendant of the jade-hearted lord, Song Xingyi. Guiyue reared her like an animal. They didn't give her a name. She wanted to choose her own after she escaped, but Song is one of the Butterfly-Bone clan's noble surnames. She dared not use it for herself, so she took the word Hua from Jade-Hearted Lord's title. Hua Bijizun, and chose a homophone. From then on, she went by Hua Gui. Hua to mark her heritage, and Gui as in return home. Once my mother learned the Butterfly-Boned clan still had a chance to return to the demon realm, it became her dearest wish. The tarnish on the mirror failed to hide Hua Gui's stunning beauty. She was speaking deferentially to Lady Lin. Though all the other maidservants seemed to be on tenterhooks before their chilly mistress, Hua Gui smiled and approached her warmly. Chu Wanning looked up. How did she end up at Tianyin Pavilion? The disciple who bought her originally. One part of the story isn't true. My mother didn't leave him after she escaped Guiyue. They were deeply in love, and my mother begged him to figure out how to save her clan members. At the time, the disciple hung on her every word. He stole apocalyptic fire from Tianyin Pavilion and helped her accomplish her goal. Oh. A crease remained between Chu Wanning's brows. So that was what happened. Not all historical records were correct. Some truths were slowly worn away by the deluge of time. When all the witnesses grew old and died, no one would know the whole story anymore. Ooh, don't get me started with that. Chimay paused for a beat. As 2 years passed, the cultivation realm gradually forgot all about the Guiyue fire. Around the same time, Lady Lin of Tianyin Pavilion happened to give birth to a daughter. The lady had a strange temperament and no enthusiasm for child rearing, so she needed a few nimble maidservants to help. The disciple who loved my mother took the opportunity to bring her into the pavilion, where she became Lady Lin's handmaiden. Chu Wanning looked back down at the copper mirror. At some point, the scene within had changed to that of Lady Lin reading by a window while Hua Guai stood by her side cradling and cooing at a swaddled child. It was a gentle scene. The mistress was poised and elegant, her maidservant devoted and loyal, the babe sweet and silly. Yet he sensed dark things looking under the surface. Now, why would you get that idea? You know what? It's fine. She took Lady Lin's place. Said Shumei. After spending some time in Tianyun Pavilion, my mother noticed how high Tianyun Pavilion's status in the cultivation realm was, above all other sects. Back then, she was still naive. She came up with a plan she thought was better than returning to the demon realm. What was it? Become the pavilion master's wife. The word of a descendant of the gods was law. She imagined that, if the pavilion master ordered it, no one in the cultivation realm would dare harm butterfly-bone beauty feasts, at least openly. Light and shadow whirled and spun in the mirror. The scene settled on the same lookout platform, but now it was the winter of some unknown year. The lotus flowers had withered and died. There were no more dragonflies, and the red carp remained submerged in their watery home. Both the lively creatures and the coolly beautiful Lady Lin were gone, replaced by falling snow, the fragrance of wintertime plum blossoms, and a woman bundled in white fox fur, seen from behind. A man approached, and she turned to him, her beautiful face nestled in the soft fur. When she smiled, it was a sight more striking than the new-fallen snow. Hua Guai had somehow managed to convince the pavilion master to divorce his wife. Mysteriously, Lady Lin had died soon after, alongside the high-ranking disciple who'd once helped Hua Guai escape Guiyue. She'd finally achieved her goal of becoming the wife of Tianyun Pavilion's master, a descendant of the gods. The sky was a leaden gray, dappled with huge flakes of falling snow. Hua Guai stepped toward her husband and bowed in greeting, then reached out with a smile to stroke the hair of the little girl beside him. Mu Yanli. Yes, said Shumei. Chu Wanning fell silent. Is Shizun wondering why, despite being Lady Lin's blood daughter, Mujijia would choose my mother over her own? Instead of replying, Chu Wanning peered into the mirror. Mu Yanli couldn't have been older than 5. Hua Guai had scooped the child up, and when her new stepmother teased her, the girl wrapped her arms around Hua Guai's slender neck and laughed to her heart's content. Lady Lin was sullen and taciturn, hardly a loving mother. After Mujijia was born, Lady Lin became unbalanced and began to hurt herself and others. Once, when my mother wasn't in the room, she jabbed the back of Mujijia's hand with a pair of scissors. She left a handful of bloody holes in her child's skin before my mother returned and stepped in to save the sobbing Mujijia. Between a mother who would stab her to death and a nanny who doted on her since she was born, Mujijia picked the latter. The scene changed. Frost lay thick on a window plastered with auspicious red paper cutouts. It must have been shortly after the new year. Hua Guai sat before a sandalwood table, writing. 2 children clustered beside her, a girl and a boy. The girl was cool and distant, but the boy had gentle features and a soft disposition. These were the young Hua Binan and Mu Yanli. All done. Hua Guai picked up the page and blew on the ink to dry it, her voice sweet. Look, your mother's copied the medicinal sex pill formula. Isn't it nice looking? Mu Yanli still had the piping voice of a child. Everything mother writes is pretty, she chirped. Shumei was so young he couldn't even babble. He sucked on his thumb, watching them tease and joke with each other. My dad was devoted to cultivation. He didn't spend much time disciplining us. She was the one who looked after both Mujijia and me. Staring at the mirror, Shumei sank into memory. She taught us to read and to use some of the simplest spells. She knew spells. Only a few. Shumei paused. Little tricks used to spook commoners. She was probably no match for even the sloppiest cultivator. Chu Wanning waited for him to continue. But she was our constant company, day in and day out. Chimay sighed, his eyes glued to the mirror. No matter how calculating she was, no matter how she treated outsiders, she loved us more than anything. Oh, man. Ooh, you want to talk about art? It's beautiful, isn't it? It's gorgeous. Stunning. Look at it. It's so cute and precious and wholesome. The scenes spun faster, light and shadow slipping by like a shuttle between a weaver's fingers, like water spilling from cupped hands. Within those flickering images, Mu Yunli and Chimay slowly grew up. Hua Gui sheltered them every step of the way. On stormy nights, she lay with Mu Yunli until she fell asleep. On hot summer afternoons, she spoon-fed Chimay cooling red bean soup. The mirror filled up with the minutiae of their lives. When I came of age, I learned cultivation. Father personally taught me Tianyan Pavilion's techniques, but I lacked talent and was slow to grasp them. He was bitterly disappointed. I, too, thought I was a useless failure. After all, Mujija had established her foundation at the age of 8, but after all my work, I still couldn't even sense qi. Within the mirror, a small Chimay sat blankly by the pond with an even smaller sword on his knees. Hua Gui appeared, her heavy skirts clutched in her hand and a deep frown between her brows. She strode over the floating wooden bridge, her eyes scanning the edges of the pond until she caught sight of Chimay's lonely figure. Relief lit her face. She made her way to the boy and bent to say something they couldn't hear. After a time, she took Chimay into her arms and turned back, carrying him into the garden and away. She had been raised at Guigueya and seen many spiritually weak people carve a niche for themselves in the cultivation realm through the medicinal arts. Although Guigueya had once abused butterfly bone beauty feasts, she didn't scorn these arts. She convinced my father to let me cultivate the path of medicine. When Chimay had told the tale of those lurid affairs, Chu Wanning had gleaned some idea of Hua Gui's competence. Though how skilled she was, he couldn't say. Now he vividly felt the sharpness of this woman's fangs. To her, Guigueya would have been like a nightmare out of hell, one that devoured most of her life. Anyone else would have had reservations about the medicinal sect, if not the deepest hatred for it, and refused to come near it again. But Hua Gui possessed cold and penetrating eyes. She knew exactly what the sect was, what she needed, and how to get it. She never let the depth of her loathing impair her decisions. All her plans were meticulously thought out. Every step she took had been worked out to the 100th step after. Even while raising Mujija and myself, she continued to seek out other members of our tribe and go to impossible lengths to help them live in safety. Yet despite her grand plans, the status of butterfly bone beauty feasts had gone unchanged, and Madame Hua had passed away long ago. What had happened? Chu Wanning recalled the rumors about butterfly bone beauty feasts and the descendants of the gods, and thought he had some idea. Madame Hua's identity came to light. Chimay didn't answer him immediately. A sharp glint flashed through his eyes. At first glance, the sentiment might have been bone-deep hatred, but on further inspection, it was a grief deeper than the sea. It shouldn't have. Father wasn't very bright. He never noticed anything amiss about her. But he remained a descendant of the gods. Even if the blood was thin in him, he had some special intuition. He looked down at the mirror. The vision that had taken shape showed the bedroom of Tianyan Pavilion's master, where a man with white-streaked hair lay in his sickbed. The year I turned 9, he fell gravely ill. It was a baffling sickness. Even the best doctors couldn't figure out what was killing him. Chimay scoffed. But it was quite obvious if you understood what was going on. My father was a son of the gods, and my mother was the daughter of demons. After the great battle between the two tribes, the demon lord cursed them. Forever after, there could be no union between gods and demons. All transgressors would die. Huh. I feel like that's important, yet I couldn't tell you why. like majorly important, but I couldn't tell you why. Father didn't know his sickness was the work of that ancient curse. As for what happened next, perhaps the divine realm acted out of pity for their descendant or simply out of vindictiveness against the demon lord. Regardless, one night, a deity appeared to my father in a dream and revealed everything. If he wanted to survive, the deity said, he had to cut all ties with the demoness. Chu Wanning studied Shimay's twisted face in silence. He knew whatever happened next hadn't been as simple as a cutting of ties. Father woke in a blinding rage. Tianyin Pavilion had always acted with impunity, and his status in the cultivation realm was unparalleled. Everyone revered him as if he was really a god, but this woman, this vessel for dual cultivation, this pile of moldering meat anyone could butcher at will, had dared to plot against him, to use him, and to lie to him. She'd even nearly killed him. She was a malicious, poisonous creature. That's why. He sucked in a deep breath. Despite the pains he took to keep his voice even, it still came out hoarse. His fingers tightened on the cup. The tea in it had cooled, unfinished. As the moment stretched, he lost control of his strength. With a sickening crack, the cup shattered, and tea splashed onto the mirror surface. Amber liquid blurred the scene within. Chu Wanning could finally make out Shimay's father summoning Hua Gui to his sickbed. He rose, barefoot, and spoke to her as if nothing was wrong. Smiling, he went to the door and, with his back to Hua Gui, lowered the bolt with a click. He turned to face his wife. A twisted grimace appeared in the smeared reflection. Shimei flinched. Suddenly he swept the mirror off the table, turning his face away. Tendons protruded from the back of his hands like twisted roots, every vein pulsing with the terror and hate. After a moment, he buried his face in his hands. His voice was heavy with utmost exhaustion. He fell silent after the first word. This beast. Loathing threatened to crash over him like a wave. A storm of scathing hate roiled in his throat. Yet the tempest's fury died before it reached his lips. Everything he wanted to say fought to leap first from his tongue, and so instead he was rendered mute. Shimei took a moment to master himself. He'd likely watched this scene in the mirror play out many times, but despite the years that had gone by, his abhorrence still threatened to overwhelm him. Slowly, he stopped trembling. That maelstrom of hatred emerged as merely a few unassuming words. That day. My holy father ate my mother alive. That's the end of the chapter. And, he killed, what's his fucking face? It was great to see him die. Huang Xiaoyue, for the implication that Huang Xiaoyue had to rely on cannibalism to get out of his situation. And after the beauty feast reveal, we were like, oh, that's why he was sensitive to cannibalism. That too, but then also this. We're on page 53 for chapter 299, which is called A Lifetime Spent Running. 1 second. I'm just counting pages here. That's not 52, 64. That's a bunch of 12. I believe we were supposed to get through 299 today. I can't immediately see that someone confirm. I believe Tuxedo is here. Can you confirm that we were supposed to get through 299? Because I do not have... Yeah, we were. Okay. So it's 5:02. We're going to go ahead and do it. We're going to do it. We are going to do this. A lifetime spent running. Chuaning's face went white as a sheet. Watching him, Shimei began to laugh, half in grief and half in madness. That's right, he said. My father ate my mother alive. She was still alive. I ran over when I heard the screaming. I didn't know what was happening. I knocked on the door and shouted, Mother, what's wrong? What's wrong? Nobody replied. On the other side of the door, she never stopped screaming. Shimei's lips parted softly around his next words. Then the door did open. The silence that followed was too like the stillness that had seized him when those doors had opened. His father, his mouth smeared with blood. His mother, her arm mutilated by his teeth. The boy whose soul seemed to have been split in two. He'd only been 9. His father had gone insane. The flesh of a butterfly-bone beauty feast could improve cultivation. Since he'd nearly died because of her, this was the least she owed him. And the abomination in front of him, this vile abomination, this cursed whelp that brought karmic punishment upon him. His father's eyes were warped with madness. He reached out, hands sticky with gore, for the child that was as still as a statue, chilled to the bone and incapable of saying a word. Shimei still hadn't grasped what was going on. He stared dazedly at the scene before him, bereft of fear or sadness. It was like he'd been drained dry in the blink of an eye, an empty shell stuck standing in the doorway. The man's hands drew closer, so close a drop of warm blood landed firmly on his cheek like a scarlet tear. Shimei looked up blankly at this unfamiliar monster. Dad? Run! Behind him, Huagui's shriek tore from her lungs. Hanan, run! Her arm had been torn apart, and her legs were shattered. The woman writhed madly toward her husband like a maggot, desperately trying to inch close enough to grab his legs. Run! Run now! Don't turn around! Don't come back! A long, shrill scream split the air. His father had whirled around and ground her face beneath his bare foot. Huagui's cheek was pressed to the floor, one golden tear slipping from the corner of her eye. Run, she croaked. With a crack, her windpipe was crushed. The scene break. Run, she'd said. Shimei had never stopped running. Every moment of every hour of every day and ceaseless night, he ran with the same frenzy with which he'd escaped Tianyin Pavilion, dragging himself through the wilderness. He ran for his life. He ran until he couldn't bear it anymore. He ran until he was falling apart. He'd already fallen apart. No matter where he fled or how long passed, he could still hear his mother's final terrifying shriek. Run. Run now. He ran from unfamiliar streets into barren wastes and tore through golden fields of wheat. He ran from the darkness of night until the arrow of dawn pierced the skies and dyed the world red. Red as blood, scarlet like the blood that poured from her body, that dripped from his mouth. His mouth shaped a formless whale. His shoes had fallen away a long time ago. The soles of his feet had torn and festered, embedded with sharp rocks and covered in bloody blisters. Golden tears poured down his cheeks. He whimpered like a trapped beast as he pushed through stands of reeds and into thorny brambles, leaving bloody footprints. He was too afraid to stop. He didn't dare look for a smoother road. He ran with everything he had along the first path he saw. He couldn't stop, because if he stopped, he'd die. He would surely die. So he never did. A decade passed in the blink of an eye. He never dared to stop. He'd die. A butterfly-bone beauty feast would die if they didn't go home. When Shui Zunju found me, I was terrified. The Tianyin Pavilion Master was looking everywhere for me. I was too scared to tell the truth, or to cry. Shui Zhenju asked me where I was from, and where my parents were, so I lied, murmured Shimei. He took me back to Xisheng Peak. A few years later, a member of the Butterfly Bone clan my mother had rescued found me. She'd been disguised as a Tianyin Pavilion disciple. To avoid suspicion, she'd scarred her own face when she entered the sect. She escaped my father's scrutiny and brought me all my mother's things. All those years, she'd been collecting demonic records, the names of Butterfly Bone beauty feasts, budding flowers of eightfold sorrows, and all the methods she'd studied of opening a door to the demon realm. It filled a heavy chest. Chu Wanning slowly closed his eyes. So you carried out the plan in her stead, did what she'd always dreamed of doing. Yes, I continued cultivating the medicinal arts. I didn't want the sect leader to suspect anything, so I used the name Hua Binan whenever I left the peak. Hua Binan's acclaim grew and grew until even Zhang Shi had heard of me. He invited me into the sect, and I followed my mother's example. Although Gugueya had once kept Butterfly Bone beauty feasts like livestock, though they'd raised my mother in captivity to carve out a place for myself in the cultivation world and attain what I needed to go home, I agreed. From then on, I wore two faces, disciple of Xisheng Peak, healer of Gugueya. Shimei paused. Later still, the pavilion master died, and Mujija took his place. She'd been searching all that time for the person who murdered her adoptive mother. At the start, I was too afraid to trust even her, but after some probing, I made up my mind to go to Tianyin Pavilion in search of her. I confessed everything. Shimei smiled, though his eyes were still dark with misery. As Shizhen can see, my gamble paid off. She is my staunchest supporter. Chu Wanning stayed silent. Though she's not a... What? Though she's not a Butterfly Bone beauty feast, she saw my mother as her own, and she sees the Butterfly Bone clan as her family. She's been helping me all these years. I hadn't put that together yet. So sorry. Hadn't gotten there. I'm there now. Helping Hua Binan, helping Shimei, helping her half-brother. Shimei tidied up the shards of the teacup and slipped the mirror back into his Changkun pouch. The rain pounded against the windows like the unquiet spirits of all those Butterfly Bone beauty feasts who died in misery. Hua Gui, Shimei's mother, was surely among their number. She was howling. Run. Run now. Don't stop. Don't look back. There's no other way. Shimei kneaded wearily at his brow, his voice a low rasp. Shizhen, we have no other way. There's only the choice between wiping out humanity or our own oblivion, and I can't choose the latter. That's a scene break. And I would bet pretty much all the money that I have had and will ever have that if they were to get to the demon realm, that wouldn't be far enough for Shimei's psyche. He would have to continue running. That's encoded into his nervous system. He can't not run. Lightning split the sky like a dagger, like the world was ending. The storm worsened, thunder pounding like the hooves of a dark cavalry across the sky. In the blinding flashes of light, sodden leaves ripped from their branches. Fucking okay, pros. Wushan Palace's doors slammed open, and the rain-soaked gale funneled into the room. Pale lightning illuminated their faces as they turned to see Mu Yanli standing in the doorway. She held no umbrella. Water dripped into her frantic eyes. Anan, we need only 30 more Zhenlong pawns. We've nearly reached the doorway to the demon realm. Shimei jolted to his feet, fingertips trembling. Where's Tishan-Chin? 30 pawns are nothing to him. Hurry up and have him finish, and then... His voice died as Mu Yanli neared. Terror outweighed joy on her face. Tishan-Jin collapsed. His heartbeat is, prompted Shimei, is in chaos. The flow of his spiritual energy is breaking apart like he'll never wake up. Impossible, Chimay raged. That's his own core. I adjusted it over 1,000 times. It wouldn't suddenly fall apart. How? He froze. A bolt of lightning ripped through the sky with a colossal boom. In the wake of that deafening crash, he slowly turned. Face deathly pale, he looked at Chu Wanning, bound, hand and foot, on the bed. Was it... His lips parted. Was it... you? The violence of the storm outside made the interior of the room feel all the quieter, as close and still as a grave. The flickering candlelight danced like the soul flags of the dead. Chu Wanning's eyes fluttered shut. He opened them and looked at Chimay. Yes, he said. It was me. Thunder pealed as if to tear the heavens apart. The earth shuddered, and rain poured down to drown the world. Chimay shuddered. He took a halting step forward. How can you still? Since you've told me a bit about your past, said Chu Wanning, his voice low and very steady, I'll tell you a bit about mine. In the past life, my spiritual core was broken, leaving me only the power of Juga. I didn't know my own origins, and I was powerless against Taishanjun. Golden light erupted at his wrists. With a series of clanks, the chains broke and the talismans burned. Chu Wanning rose from the bed, phoenix eyes blazing. In this life, he's held me captive long enough for me to sink the spells into his heart. Chu Wanning's face was wiped clean of emotion. There was no sorrow, grief, pity, or regret. Nothing but the placid stillness of the dead. As the spells burrow deeper, they'll disrupt his spiritual energy and stop his heart. This perfect weapon of yours has been destroyed by my hand. I'm sorry, Huabinan. I cannot let you return home. What? Chimay had never dreamed of a twist like this. His face was whiter than jade and colder than ice. He stared disbelievingly at Chu Wanning, lips quivering. It ends here, said Chu Wanning. Light flared in his palms. You're insane! Staring at that golden light, Chimay seemed to go mad, his eyes flashing with bestial wildness. You're going to kill him! You're going to kill him! How could you? How can you bear to? No one could read the emotion that flickered in Chu Wanning's dark eyes. I can, he said. The golden light brightened, but Chu Wanning's face was beginning to crumple. Though he was but a branch from the Flame Emperor's tree, he had an instinctive grasp of many of the sacred tree's heavenly spells. Tianyuan's 10,000 coffins had been born of these hazy impressions. He'd once thought this mere chance. But now he knew the truth. As a piece of the sacred tree itself, he'd been imprinted with the spell markings of the god Shenong. If he reached into his memory, he could recall ancient techniques like the space-time gate of life and death, and the one he was using for the first time now. Corpse destruction. This spell had originated in that primordial battle between gods and demons. Most of the humans on Earth were grievously injured in the battle, and the survivors were awash in a sea of corpses. They soon fell sick, infected, and ill. By then, Fushi was bent on dealing with the rest of the demons, and the injured Nua had sunken into the sleep of a primordial deity. Shenong was the only one left who could save them. The god of medicine sank the Flame Emperor's colossal tree into the sea. The sacred tree's crown scraped the heights of the heavens, and its roots plumbed the depths of the earth. It possessed countless branches and infinite fruits. Sacred tree. 10,000 coffins. Every last root of the Flame Emperor's sacred tree tunneled beneath the sea. Excuse me. That wasn't supposed to be in Chu Wanning's voice. I'm so beside. Anyway, every last root of the Flame Emperor's sacred tree tunneled beneath the EC and blanketed the cultivation world in an instant. All those roots, thick or thin, rough or delicate, rose from the earth in a shower of dirt. Decimate. Retract. The roots had enveloped every rotting corpse and crushed them to ash. The sea of corpses disappeared, and the ashes became fertile soil from which splendid flowers bloomed. Having completed its first mission since settling into the world, the tree recalled its its roots to the East Sea, or so it was recounted in the oldest records of the Flame Emperor's sacred tree. Light blazed in Chu Waning's eyes. This was one of Shenong's spells, one he could only use because he was part of the sacred tree. Now that he had called upon it, that person would be reduced to ash, leaving nothing behind. He was just a corpse, Chu Waning thought in agony. There was no reason to stay his hand. You, Chu Waning, you... Shimei stared at him, eyes flashing with fury and madness. All his planning across 2 lifetimes had culminated in this moment. He couldn't allow Chu Waning to succeed. Stop right there. Chu Waning looked up calmly, just as he had that rainy day all those years ago, when he watched the boy Shimei standing beneath the study hall's roof at Xishang Peak. That was rude. He had never suspected Shimei was secretly a butterfly-bone beauty feast. His earliest impressions of him had come from what other people said. A child had come to Xishang Peak, one who worked tirelessly but couldn't use any spells due to the weakness of his spiritual core. Because of his lack of innate gifts, none of the elders would take him for their disciple. Even Xuanji, upon testing the boy's spiritual roots, had regretfully declined. That day, rain had streamed off the black tile of the eaves. A child as fresh as a blossoming lotus looked helplessly up at the sky, clutching a thick stack of books to his chest. Chu Wanning blinked as he recognized the little outcast. You. He stepped toward him, his oil paper umbrella held high. You hung elder. Startled, the little thing hastily lowered his head, that pile of books almost brushing his chin. He struggled to keep his balance as he bowed. Good evening, elder. It's so late. You're still at the study hall. I can't help it. There's too much to read. I didn't finish in time. Chu Wanning glanced down, his eyes landing on the book at the top of the pile. Compendium of Guyueya's Healing Arts. The boy looked abashed, his cheeks coloring prettily. I'm a bit slow. All I can do is read about the medicinal arts. Not that I think Guyueya is better. Baffled, Chu Wanning frowned. It's just a book. Don't be so anxious. The boy's head drooped, shoulders curling in. This disciple misspoke. On his small and slender frame, that desperate attempt to make himself inconspicuous plucked at Chu Wanning's heartstrings. He couldn't help but recall what the other elders had said. That Shimei is certainly well behaved. Too bad he's not got much of a gift. Truth is, he's not suited to cultivation. I don't know what the sect leader was thinking. Why take in someone with no real potential? If it was only out of pity, let him be a cook or a dishwasher at Mengpo Hall. It's not a bad solution. But he seems to have an interest in the medicinal arts. Tenlong, you won't consider taking him? No, the Tenlong elder had replied languidly. I don't like my disciples too soft. Chu Wanning held out the umbrella, raindrops plinking from the oiled paper like dropped pearls. The fingers around its handle were fine-boned and slender. Let's go, said Chu Wanning. It's late. I'll walk you back. A little white wildflower trembled on the roof. Shimei blinked, then bowed deeply before ducking underneath the umbrella. They had walked into the distance beneath the gentle rain. Today that boy's eyes were the crimson of blood, his whole body tensed like a bow about to snap. Chu Wanning, he snarled. Why must you obstruct me? It's too late. The dead are dead. 30 more won't make a difference. 30 more paltry lives to save so many of the butterfly-boned clan. After thousands of years, we can finally go home. Why now? What gives you the right? His rage matched the storms, yet he resembled a blinded and declawed dragon. Not a wisp of that old gentleness remained. Those dead cultivators won't come back to life, even if you destroy Teishanjin. Not supposed to be, and I want everybody to talk like Chu Wanning today. Let's try that again. Those dead cultivators won't come back to life, even if you destroy Teishanjin. Even if he's ruined, this realm is unsalvageable. But you, why? To close the space-time gate before divine punishment arrives, said Chu Wanning evenly. This world may be unsalvageable, but the other can be saved. I only need 30 more lives. Even one more life is one too many. Chu Wanning closed his eyes, the light from his hands reaching its blinding peak. Tianwen, 10,000 coffins. A muffled boom answered his hoarse cry, just as when Shenong cleared the corpses millennia ago. He slammed his hands together. Far away, in the back mountain, willow vines wound tightly around the unconscious Taishanjin. Shimay's lips had gone bloodless, his pupils shrinking to dots. How could you be so cruel? Denying us our last hope of survival. Killing your own disciple. I only wanted 30 lives. That would be 30 lives after... 30 more lives. More lives. One world covered in corpses, the other one on the cusp of destruction. Who knew what calamities were to come once the demon realm's gates opened? The demon clans had been bloodthirsty and violent since ancient times. Only after Guchen's betrayal and Fushu's bright onslaught were they forced out of the mortal realm. It wasn't a matter of 30 more lives, and even if it was, who deserved to die? Who should be sacrificed to pave the way home for the butterfly-boned clan? I can no longer say words. Golden light gleamed between his palms and shone in Shimay's eyes. The bright glow threatened to gouge out his heart. Shimei struggled toward him, but a barrier had risen before Chu Wanning. He couldn't get close. Without Taishanjun, Shimei was like a butcher without his knife, armed only with his mortal hands. Neither he nor Mu Yanli was a match for Chu Wanning. Gripped by despair, Shimay's eyes turned so red they seemed to drip blood. What could he do? What should he do? There was still one thing he could use. Like a hunter facing down ferocious prey, staggering toward his pack for the final weapon he possessed, he hurled the last of his hopes at the man bent on destroying his life's work. Very well. Shizun, you're the ruthless one. Go on then. Go ahead. Do what you will. Baffled by his sudden change in attitude, Chu Wanning watched warily as Shimei flung his head back and burst into laughter, a hand over his face. He looked down and fixed his eyes on Chu Wanning, every word ground to dust between his teeth. Go ahead, Shizun. Reduce him to nothingness. You and I will both lose. We can both end up a wreck. Mu Yanli's eyes stung at the sight of him so crazed. An, she whispered. But Shimei couldn't hear her. With the frantic desperation of a cornered beast, he spat with blood and venom. Go on, kill him. Kill him. Shimei's lightless eyes peered from between his fingers, pinned on Chu Wanning, along with the last cognizant soul inside him. He snarled. The soul that loves you still. That's the end of the chapter. And now's where we have to stop. We're on next time, as I remember English, we'll be on page 65 for chapter 300, which is called Hearts Aligned. I am late finishing today, so I have to go. Once again, thank you for being here. On Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have book chats, and then for patrons, YouTube members, and then these reading streams from 3 to 5. Give the stream a like if you had a time. If you're anywhere near as furious at this woman as I am, if you hate her almost as much as I do, give the stream a like and follow Gaywatch for more. Have a lovely week. We are back with Erha. Welcome back to Erha, everyone. I'll see you in a couple of days. And above all, the most important thing is to take care of yourself.